Okay, here we go. First, we're going to make our oatmeal muffin cups. And because we were talking about sustaining carbohydrates this week, I thought it'd be a really good time for us to make one of my very favorite recipes. It's great for breakfast or for a snack. And we are going to start with some oats. These are just typical old-fashioned oats, oatmeal. You can use quick oats if you want to. This is 2 cups. I'm going to go ahead and pour it in here. And this is a 1 bowl thing. I'm not going to get too fancy and mix things in separate bowls. And then I'm going to go ahead and add in my sea salt and baking soda. So this is soda, not baking powder. If you don't have soda, let me know and I can give you a substitution for it. And then I'm going to add in some ground flaxseed. Now this is not in the actual recipe, but I add this as an add-in. So I'm using 2 tablespoons of ground flaxseed here. And ground flaxseed is very nice because it helps, one thing, it's a nice gentle fiber for you, and it helps bring some bulk into the stool, and with elimination it's very helpful. It's a nice form of fiber, also a great source of good fats, particularly the fat called oleic acid, which we need oleic acid in our cell membrane, or like the envelope around our cells, to help keep our cells nice and supple so that minerals can get in there that we need, like calcium and magnesium and chromium. And so that's one of the things I actually test for in my nutrient panel is oleic acid. That helps with bringing down inflammation, that type of thing. So flaxseed is a very nice thing to add in here. And then I'm going to be adding in we're going to be using some vinegar that kind of counteracts the baking soda, because this is a recipe was originally intended for people who couldn't use baking soda in a diet. So I'm going to put that into my milk. Today I'm using some rice milk. I usually use coconut milk for this one. You can use a dairy milk if you want to, but any plant-based milk would work with this one. You can make homemade almond milk or cashew milk very easily, and we might do that in another episode. But so this is my rice milk. I added the vinegar in here to kind of help it, almost like a homemade buttermilk, if you've done that before. I'm going to add that. I'm going to go ahead and put this in the bowl here. And then I'm using avocado oil today. I cook with a lot of avocado oil versus olive oil. One, it's a little bit less expensive. There's still lots of good sources of monounsaturated fat. We'll talk a little bit more about that in our fat episode, when we talk about fats and lipids and things like that. But this is what I'm using in here. You can use coconut oil, you can use olive oil, you can use some melted butter or ghee if you want to. Then I'm going to be adding in some maple syrup, which is just 1/4 cup of maple syrup. And originally when I created this recipe, I was using twice as much sweetener, but I discovered that we really didn't need that much. And so this makes it a lightly sweetened treat. The oats themselves are naturally have a sweeter flavor to them. So 1/4 cup of maple syrup. You can use honey if you want to as well. Those are 2 of the liquid sweeteners I like to use. And then I'm going to add in 2 eggs. And I'm not whisking them up ahead of time or anything. Just doing it like it is. And then I'm going to show you one other thing. So this is not in the recipe, but there's a part in there where you can add some bling or add some fun things to it. So what I'm going to use is an orange, and I'm going to zest the orange to put in here. You could do this with lemon as well, because we're also going to add in some blueberries. So orange and blueberry go nicely together, so do orange and lemon. Got someone else joining us. Orange and lemon, orange and blueberry go well together. So I'm going to use my microplane zester here, which is actually, it's a company that originally started making woodworking tools, but it's very, very fine. It's going to take off the finest strips of our orange here on the outside, and that will help us get in some citrus bioflavonoids, which bioflavonoids are part of a citrus fruit and part of fruits in general that help you get some vitamin C inside of your cells. So just taking plain vitamin C itself doesn't necessarily get as well inside of the cell. So I love using the zest of citrus. There's a lot of compounds in here that we don't even know about. I'm sure there's in a Whole Foods things that we can't even label or classify. But this is a great way not to get rid of your citrus parts that are helpful for you. I might not end up getting all of this out. I try to get the entire thing zested. I'm going to let you see part of this one right here. There's a darker strip, that's the zest, and then a little lighter part underneath. It's going to be a little bit more bitter. So we're just going to leave that there. Only need the very outside peeling. The other thing that citrus zest provides for us is something called inositol. And inositol is one of those members of the B vitamin family, but I think they ran out of B numbers, and so they just called it inositol. And inositol is a hormone, can help our hormones. It can help lower testosterone if needed for women who have had higher testosterone levels. And you may be in a stage of life where you're not as concerned about that one, but it is very helpful for women with PCOS. But another reason inositol is nice is it helps with sleep. It helps with calming influence. And so sometimes I do use therapeutic amounts of inositol with my clients to help just calm them down. I combine it with some magnesium, and it's just a very calming influence. So that's one reason I like to get our inositol in food if we can. Another food source of inositol is cantaloupe, which is fun. We are getting that coming up this season. I'll tell you what, I'm not going to get the entire orange zested right now. I may save this to put in a salad or a stir fry. Like I said, you can use lemon, you could use lime zest if you wanted to. The other thing we're going to be using is some, like I said, frozen blueberries. So I did a cup of these for our add-in. And it says, I think in the add-ins here, it says add up to a half a cup. I've decided that I even go up to a full cup of add-ins sometimes. So you can use big blueberries, small blueberries. These are just normal size. They may turn the batter a little bit purple, but I don't think anybody's going to worry about that one. We don't have any fresh blueberries that are available these days. And I find that it's a lot easier to find organic frozen blueberries most of the time, unless we're in the middle of the summer and things are abundant or you grow your own. Otherwise, I look in the frozen section for my organic berries. Berries tend to be one of the fruits that retain a lot of pesticide residue because of the thin skin on there. You can't wash them off easily. And so I try to buy organic berries when I can. So we have this set. The one other thing I'm going to be adding into this is a little bit of, and I'll show you, this is white collagen powder. And collagen powder this is derived from beef. It's like gelatin, except for it's broken down a little bit smaller. This is really, really nice to help with our gut lining and GI lining repair. So I'd like to bring this in. Another benefit is it helps with skin, hair, and nails. So just a little side, if you're like, oh, I feel like my hair is just not strong and supple, or I'm thinking about like skin and want it to be unlined or help with wrinkles and that kind of thing. So a lot of benefits of collagen. Also helps with our joints. So if I'm having someone who's having a lot of joint pain, joint issues, maybe some cartilage concerns, then we'll pull in some collagen. And even just 1 scoop a day can be helpful. I usually put it in my smoothie in the morning, but you can bake with it too. So I throw 1 scoop of this or 1 tablespoon into my recipes, just as a little extra. We don't typically get a lot of collagen in our diet because we do not eat, normally, most of us don't eat animal proteins anymore that have the bones in them. We buy a lot of boneless, skinless chicken breasts, and we buy a lot of ground beef that doesn't have that cartilage in there. And so that's just one quick way to get some of that back in our diet. There's an amino acid in there, which is a protein building block called glycine. It's like a little Lego block that builds up to bigger forms. And that glycine, again, is very helpful for many different functions in the body. One of it is gut repair. So I'm just going to whisk this up, and I typically don't just make 1 recipe of this. I usually make a triple recipe. So I have a really big mixing bowl. We have a big family. These go fast, but you can just make 1 recipe, but I will tell you they freeze very easily. So I say if you're making 1 thing, you might as well just at least double it to save yourself some effort. And this will make 12 muffin cups. I'm going to go ahead and use my scooper here. This is like you would use at a food service. It makes things really easy for me, but you can just use a spoon or spatula if you want to. But I use this a lot when I'm making cookies or muffins, just to help make sure things are even and that it's just quicker for me. I'm realizing I'm kind of using a bigger scoop than I might have needed, so if you find that you kind of run out of room, or you run out of batter before you run out of muffin cups, then either you can make another recipe, or, so I'm going to show you, this did not, I should have made smaller muffin cups. I only have 4 wells here that are not filled in. So I'll put some water in these wells if I don't make another batch, just so that these muffin cups bake evenly and I don't warp the muffin pan. So this is my USA pan that I showed you last week. So I did not line it with anything. I didn't spray it. I just put the muffin batter right in here. And we're going to bake it at 350 for probably about 30 minutes because it's a little bit thicker. I have more batter in the cups. I realized I didn't even turn on my oven right now, and we wouldn't have time for these to bake, but I'm going to send you a picture of these so you know what they look like afterwards. I really wish I could share a taste of them with you because they're really, really good. One of my other favorite combinations, if I'm not using the blueberries and the orange zest, is a half a cup of shredded coconut and then about a tablespoon or 2 of the little bitty mini chocolate chips. I like to use Enjoy Life chocolate chips. They're dairy-free, soy-free. They're really, really good. But it just makes for a fun treat. Now that I'm thinking about it, next time I try that, I'm going to be adding some orange zest into that recipe. That really reminds me of a cookie that I used to enjoy, like an oatmeal hermit cookie. So I'm going to try that next time. But that's just one option. You can experiment with this recipe. You can put anything in there you want to. Dried fruits, nuts, seasonings if you want to. And I have a lot of ideas for how to spice it up. But we're going to go ahead and move on to well, I've got one thing in the middle, but then we'll move on to our next recipe where we use some more spices and seasonings that are actually very therapeutic. So if you have questions about that recipe, if you try it out, just let me know. I'd love to know what you think about it. I'm going to put these things to the side and then bring in my next showcase. I told you in our class that I would show you a little bit about millet. And I did want to show that to you before we started our creamy sweet potato soup. So millet is a gluten-free grain. If you can see this right here, millet is actually what you find in birdseed. So most people are like, oh, I've seen those little yellow balls. It's a little bit of a brown speck in there. But millet is very easily digested. Has lots of good nutrients. It's naturally gluten-free. It's actually one of the first things that I start babies on for baby food. We grind that up. And millet has a taste that's very similar to corn. So if you like corn, but it doesn't like you back, then millet is a great alternative to that. And I just cook it with water, 1 cup of millet plus 3 cups of water, and I cook that for about 15 to about 20 minutes. I'm not sure if you can see very well, but this is what it looks like. It's kind of fluffy, yellow, almost looks like grits after you finish it up. But millet is a very nice complement to Mexican dishes if you like that. You can kind of go savory with it. You can use it in any place that you would use rice. So I've put it in soups before. I've put it with like black beans and millet and some spices and seasonings, sauteed peppers and onions. But you can also take a sweet spin on millet, and you can put like some berries, a little bit of maple syrup, maybe some coconut milk and chopped nuts, and have that in the morning for breakfast. It's a very sustaining treat. So you can typically buy millet at places like Whole Foods. You can buy it. I've seen it at stores like Kroger or Publix sometimes. You can also buy it online, and I buy it through my co-op called Azure Standard, and Azure delivers once a month to many different drop points in the United States. I'm going to send you all a link to that in case that's something you're interested in doing. You order online, and then you just pick up your order once a month, which is a nice place to buy either bulk foods that you like to buy in bulk, or even small amounts of foods. They have their own brand and line of things, so it typically ends up being a lot cheaper for me. Even if you don't buy 25 to 50 pounds of beans or grains, it's a nice way to shop online, get some spices, herbs, those types of things, and then just have to pick it up. You don't even have to go in the grocery store. So if you're in my area, I'm the coordinator of our Azure Standard Drop, and we pick up at the Stonecrest Hospital in Smyrna, if that's something anyone is interested in doing, and I hold it for you if you can't get it on that day. So love to talk to you more about that if you're interested. But let's go ahead and go on to our creamy sweet potato soup. And I've had sweet potatoes cooking in the Instant Pot this morning, and they went off just a little bit ago. I put a 3-pound bag of sweet potatoes into the Instant Pot, put it on top of my wire rack, and put a cup of water in the bottom there. And then I turned on the Instant Pot for 15 minutes on high. So it means it had to come up to pressure, and then it cooked at pressure for 15 minutes. And then as soon as it came to pressure, I have an option to push the cancel button so it doesn't keep it warm. So hopefully the little red button on top has gone down, which means the pressure has decreased in my Instant Pot. And I'll just open the top and I'll show you what I'm talking about. It's maybe a little hot to handle. I probably should have cooked them a little earlier, but I just wanted to explain that it's very easy to cook a lot of sweet potatoes. You could bake the sweet potatoes in your oven if you want to. It's a good way to use up leftover baked sweet potatoes. So I would say if you buy sweet potatoes in the store, just cook some extra. Instead of cooking 1 or 2 for yourself, cook a few more. Sweet potatoes are easy to cook in the microwave if that's just an easier way for you to get them prepared. So we just need cooked sweet potatoes for this. So I'm gonna go ahead and get those out of the Instant Pot. Okay, so my Instant Pot has not depressurized yet, so I'm going to show you a trick that I use to get the pressure down. I'm going to use a wooden spoon because steam coming out of this is very dangerous, and I'm going to use a towel to cover up the steam vent. So I'm going to use a wooden spoon and stand away, and I just turn the top little vent a little bit to let some of that steam come out. It looks like it was about to depressurize anyway. The little red button just popped down on top. So I'm safe. It's not spewing any steam anywhere. Okay. It is hot. Okay. So I have a pot of sweet potatoes. Let's see, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have 7 sweet potatoes right now. And because this is still so hot, I'm going to get a bowl to put them in, and I'm going to show you what it looks like in the bowl. So typically what I would do is take these sweet potatoes out, put them in a bowl, and take the peeling off of it because it's going to slide off very easily. I would say probably let them cool for about 30 minutes before you start doing anything, but I'm going to use some tongs with the bowl and kind of the sweet potato skins slide off very easily once the sweet potatoes are cooked. So that's a nice thing. Once they cool down, it's even easier to get it off. But that way you don't have to peel sweet potatoes, which can be a pain. The other thing is that you can buy sweet potatoes that are frozen and already cubed up. I know that Walmart sells these, Kroger sells these, and that way you just kind of steam those sweet potato cubes and you don't even have to deal with a whole sweet potato. So that's another easy way to be able to make this recipe if you don't use a whole sweet potato. So I just took the sweet potato skin off with a tong, and I've got this sweet potato meat right here. I need 4 cups of this for my recipe. So just so I'm exact, I'm going to measure it into a 4-cup glass measuring cup. I will tell you that when I'm typically making this, I just kind of guess, and because it's my family and I can taste and adjust it. But if I'm making it for other people, or if I'm going to serve it, then I'll do a little bit more. But I'm going to try to take the skin off of one other one, and I'm going to just talk about the ingredients that go into this one. I just made up this soup one day when we were needing something in the winter time, and it was fast and easy. I think I probably had some sweet potatoes left over, and my children all like sweet potatoes, but they don't always like the sweet potatoes. Can have a little bit of fiber in there, and that sometimes it can come through, and my kids don't really like that fibrous taste of baked sweet potatoes always. So pureeing it is a nice way to make it smooth and silky, and so they don't have any qualms with it. So I'm just going to pretend that we've got 4 cups of sweet potatoes in here, and then I'll show you the rest of the ingredients that go in. So I'm going to use some salt, some Himalayan pink salt. I already have that measured out. I think that's 1 teaspoon of the sea salt. And I'm just going to dump it in with the sweet potatoes. And then the two other things that we're going to be using would be some ground ginger, which you can use ground or fresh ginger, either one. I like the taste of ginger with sweet potatoes. If you don't like ginger, that's okay. You can leave it out. But I'm going to go ahead and put 2 teaspoons of that in here. And then the other thing that I have is some cinnamon. And this is Ceylon cinnamon. So one of the reasons that I'm using cinnamon right now and making a recipe for you with this is that there is some research that supports cinnamon for Parkinson's. And ground cinnamon, once it's metabolized and you eat it, it turns into a product called sodium benzoate. And that sodium benzoate can actually enter the brain and can protect your neurons, normalize your neurotransmitter levels, which dopamine is one of those levels, and then helps improve your motor function. I've met someone within the past year who was talking to me who has Parkinson's and said he started taking cinnamon and just noticed a big improvement. So it may be something that at least that you can incorporate from a culinary standpoint. 2 teaspoons of cinnamon is a good amount for this one. You could have added cinnamon into your oatmeal muffin cups if you like it. And it's just another way to use food as medicine for our body. I do want to add a caveat though. I mentioned that sodium benzoate, but I kind of find that there's some people when we do a test for food chemicals who are actually having inflammation as a result of either cinnamon or benzoic acid, which is, I mentioned that sodium benzoate. So I have 2 children who we really have to watch their amount of benzoic acid that they eat. And one child who just does not do well with that at all. It causes sometimes, I can't remember which symptoms it causes now, but he just says, Mama, I don't feel good when I eat cinnamon or things with a high amount of benzoic acid in there. So he might be able to have a tiny bit, but we just don't do a huge amount of it. So sometimes when you start using more amounts of things in our cooking, just pay attention to your symptoms and see, maybe I don't feel very good when I add that in, because just because it's good for everybody doesn't necessarily mean it's good for you. And that's one of the food chemicals, if we were to go forward and do some food sensitivity and food chemical testing, that we may discover is something we need to watch for you. But otherwise, cinnamon is a nice flavor. It's also implicated in helping with blood glucose control. So that's another benefit of cinnamon and using that in your cooking. So I was going to mention one other thing. The cinnamon cassia is another variety of cinnamon, typically I think from China, that you can buy at the store. That's one that I don't recommend in using in very high amounts. It could be more toxic to the liver if we start using high amounts of that. So I look for the Ceylon, Ceylon type of cinnamon. And that's one that I order in bulk from Azure Standard too. I buy it in a bigger bag. Okay, so we have our cinnamon and our ginger and our salt and our sweet potatoes. The one other ingredient that we're going to add into the soup is some coconut milk. And I like coconut milk because it helps make things creamy. And so this is a can of coconut milk. I typically don't use this brand, but it's the only thing we could get during quarantine. So this just has coconut and some guar gum in here. So guar gum is at least a little bit more natural for people. Sometimes coconut milk can have like metabosulfites and things like that that don't work well for people. So just pay attention to the back of the can. This is from Kroger. There's a lot of other like organic coconut varieties that you can look at. Guar is spelled G-U-A-R. I'm going to use a can of this coconut milk. I think this is still a little bit hot. I'm pouring this all into the measuring cup right now because I'm not putting it back in the pan. But I use a can of coconut milk, and then I use the same amount of water just to dilute it down a little bit. You could use 2 cans of coconut milk if you needed the extra calories. That's fine. Or you could use another kind of plant-based milk if you want to. You don't have to use coconut. And I have some water over here. I'm going to pour the water in, and I've made a mess already. Okay. So you could use an almond milk with that, a cashew milk. You could use a dairy milk if you wanted to. Coconut just makes it nice and creamy. So what I'm going to do for this to make it creamy and make it easy for me, I think I showed you my immersion blender last week. This is the immersion blender. It comes apart like this. It goes on the base, and that can go straight down into a pot of soup, or into a measuring cup. You just have to make sure that the ingredients are going to cover up to about right here on the immersion blender. It can start to splatter everywhere. So you put it down in there first, and then you turn on the button right here. I'm not going to do this for you because it's going to make a really loud noise and not going to be helpful. But this is going to go into the soup, and I'm just going to hold it on high. Just kind of hold it on my finger of the button here on this one, and just kind of move it around slowly until the soup is creamed. And you can kind of go up and down just very gently a little bit. If you don't have an immersion blender, that's okay. You can use a food processor. You can use a regular blender if you have one of those, because the sweet potatoes are so soft, it doesn't have to be a high power blender. But just make sure if the sweet potatoes are still very warm, then you want to make sure that you allow room for that steam to escape on top. Be careful, sometimes that can be a problem if you're blending up hotter or warm soup in a blender. That's just the one caveat. And if you don't have anything else, you can revert to the caveman form of a blender, and you can use a potato masher. So nothing wrong with that. You can just mash some potatoes up in the pot. It just won't be quite as creamy. But that's just really 1, 2, 3, 4 real ingredients in this recipe, plus the salt and the water. So that's a super simple one that you can make. One way that you can add, if you want to add a little bit more protein to this, you can add in a protein powder. If you want to, you could substitute bone broth for the water in the recipe. I like to use sometimes just like there's a beef protein powder that I use sometimes for my family, and I think I have that in the Parkinson's nutrition section of my full script dispensary. It's called Pure Paleo. Doesn't have a flavor. You could also use some of that collagen powder I mentioned. But if you just need to bring it up and add a little bit more protein to it and make it more of a meal, or you could serve this along with like some chicken or fish or that type of thing. Or if you need this in the morning, if you have significant interaction between protein and your medication, then this might be something that would be even a good morning thing to have. You could have it chilled if you like, or just warm it up in the morning. I'm going to give you some really great antioxidants with that. Sweet potato, good source of beta carotene, lots of sustaining fiber in there to help you stay full, much better than a bowl of cereal. We already know about all the other benefits of the anti-inflammatory herbs, spices that we put in there. So just a simple, easy soup that goes for any season. So those are our goodies for today. Again, I'll send you an email of the recipes. If you have questions about them, just let me know. But hopefully just a little bit of wholesome inspiration. And I will be seeing you around the table on Friday. Again, if you have questions that you would like me to address on Friday, let me know. I'm going to be sending out some things for you to ponder as we go into Friday, ways that you can jump in and share a few things about some small steps that you've been taking or where you may be feeling stuck. So I'd like it to still just be a good discussion. So you can either just talk around the table or you can send things to me ahead of time. But thanks for letting me join you in my kitchen, and have a wonderful Wednesday.